Welcome to Unit 9, Developmental Psychology. You may notice that I'm doing something a little bit different in this video. I'm embedding my face, my talking, into the screen so you can sort of get like more of that live and in-person type of lecture. So we'll see how you like it and how it works and how I like it and how I think it works. So back to Unit 9. So Unit 9 is my absolute favorite unit of the entire 14 units that we cover in Psych because I just love studying human development. This is really one of my favorites because I love people. I love looking at like why we do the things we do at certain ages and things like that. But even now more so than ever, as a parent, I am just in awe of how a person goes from being, a baby with very little, that they can do all the way up through, your age, like how, you grow into this sort of young adult and then beyond. So let's first start off with, let's see here. Why isn't this working? I don't know why it's not working. There it goes. Sorry about that. So let's start off talking about the different issues that developmental psychologists talk about when they research the human lifespan. So really, developmental psychologists study everything, our whole human development from conception to birth. So I realize that there are a lot of political and religious discussions on to when exactly life begins and all of that. But for our purposes in psych, developmental psychologists, they say life begins at conception, and so they begin studying human development at conception. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the three major issues that developmental psychologists study over and over again in different ways. The first one is nature versus nurture. This is the discussion that we've been having all year. This is psychology's biggest question. Are we who we are because of our genetic makeup, because of evolutionary genes that have been passed down to us from generation to generation? Or are we who we are because of nurture, our environment, how our parents raised us, and our experiences along the way? The second major issue is continuity and stages. Is human development like an elevator with smooth transitions from floor to floor or stage to stage? Or is it more like rungs on a ladder where we go from rung to rung or stage to stage with distinctive ideas and developmental milestones that happen at each stage? And then finally, there's stability and change. Now, stability refers to us remaining who we are at every stage of our life. Or do we change from stage to stage? So for example, who you are at 9 years old, is that who you're going to be when you're 18 or 28 or 48 or 78? Do you remain relatively the same as you grow from age to age and developmental stage to developmental stage? These are the big questions that we'll look at in this unit. So let's talk about prenatal development and the competent newborn. So I'm assuming that we all know how babies are made, so I'm not going to get into all of that, but this is what happens at conception. And you know from biology class and those special talks with your parents that conception happens with the sperm fertilizing the egg. And from there, the fertilized egg divides and then cell divides and more cell division and so on and so forth. And that happens relatively quickly, as we know. But as we move through human development in the womb, there are three distinct phases that we go through. So the first phase is when human beings are zygotes, and that's this first picture here. It doesn't look much like a human being, but you can sort of start to see the head and the eyes and the spine is right here. You can really see how it's going to be, but it doesn't really look all that human. This stage lasts for about 2 weeks after conception. Then from weeks 2 to about week 8 after conception, we are embryos. And this is the embryonic stage right here. And you can already start to see that this bubble here that surrounds the baby, that is what we call the placenta. And that's how we get nutrients from our mothers during pregnancy. And the embryonic stage lasts till about 8 weeks or so. And finally, we then move into the fetal stage, which is the last picture here, figure C. And this is really, it does start to look like a baby. It just doesn't have like the fat that a newborn baby has. A lot of the systems are not fully developed. But this is the stage that we stay in until we are born and we are sort of like released from the placenta and all of that. That's prenatal development. And just so you're aware that it takes about 40 weeks to grow a baby. So that's give or take plus or minus 2 weeks on average. So those weeks are really just sort of estimations that obstetricians use as they track the growth of a healthy baby. So during prenatal development, there are a number of things that women have to worry about. Of course, we want to make sure that we're eating right and getting plenty of water and things like that. But there are big, very important chemicals and such that women need to stay away from when they're pregnant because a lot of those things cross the placenta. Those things are known as teratogens. These are agents such as chemicals and viruses that can reach the baby during prenatal development, and this can cause harm to the growing baby inside. These are chemicals like smoke, from smoking a cigarette, even inhaling it, a secondhand smoke can be harmful. These are things like alcohol and obviously drugs, all kinds of drugs, even pharmaceuticals. And of course, sort of like recreational drugs, as they call them, are very harmful. And especially alcohol. There's been lots of tests on alcohol with that. So these teratogens are really, we need to stay away from them when a woman is pregnant. And even something like caffeine can cause some harm to the baby. And because a lot of studies have been done and they're not quite sure how much of each substance is harmful and when does it actually turn harmful, the amount that you have, they don't really know. So they just tell women to stay away from all those kinds of things, particularly alcohol. And we'll talk a little bit right now about fetal alcohol syndrome. So this is physical and cognitive abnormalities in children once they're born because a woman has been heavily drinking during pregnancy. And many times, because it is so severe, the abnormalities are very physically aware, out of proportioned head sizes and sort of abnormal facial features. It's really quite sad. Again, because doctors and researchers don't know exactly how much alcohol causes these issues, they just tell women, don't risk it, don't take any of it. And this is a relatively new sort of finding in research, because I remember as I was having my own children, my mother would say, oh yeah, they told us it was fine to drink and to smoke cigarettes during pregnancy. It was totally fine. So you can imagine now with all that research, it's just amazing, that in the short amount of time, in the 20 or so years, they've really come really to a better understanding that this takes a lot of toll on the baby. So once the baby is born, here's this baby, so cute. Now this baby is about 3 or 4 months old. So this isn't a newborn, but it's a relatively young baby. This baby is still, laying on her back. So not a baby that can roll over and crawl yet. So let's talk about a newborn. So we consider a person a newborn when they're 3 months and younger. So newborns have certain reflexes that we'll talk about in class, but it's things like the sucking reflex and the grasping reflex. Most of the reflexes have to do with survival. We're going to hold off on habituation for right now. Sensation and perception is one thing that begins to develop in the womb. So, for example, we can hear things when we're inside our mother's womb. We can sort of see light and things like that. And then as we grow as babies, our sensation and our perception develops even more critically. So things like our vision and our ability to hear things and touch and things like that really does come upon us as we grow in those few months after birth. So in the next video, which you'll see, we will be discussing some other elements of the newborn and young children. So click on the next video and I will talk to you soon.